Hey, before I get into what we discussed this last week, I want to remind you of two upcoming opportunities. We have February 4th, Tuesday at 6 p.m., the creation evolution debate between Ken Ham from Answers in Genesis and Bill Nye, the science guy. They will be addressing the question of whether or not creation is a viable model for origins in this scientific era. Hope you'll join us for that, 6 o'clock, February 4th. And then on Wednesday, February 19th, we have our on the spot question and answer for local teens, where you'll have a panel of youth pastors to pose questions to. Hope you'll join us for both of those. Now, this last week, we continued in our discussion as we looked at the two things that we all really kind of know when it gets down to it. We know that the world is amazing and life has all sorts of wonders to enjoy, but yet we also seem to know that something's broken, something is not going the way it should. And the last couple weeks, we were focusing on number one, and we looked at how God is amazing, how he created the universe and it's full of wonders and full of joys and full of all sorts of things, and about how God is shown himself to be loving, to be caring, to be mighty, to be amazing, to be a God of beauty. He created beauty, to be a God of pleasure. He created pleasure, and to be a God of order, because this universe that he has created works so fantastically in an orderly fashion. And so we see he is a God of order, not a God of chaos and confusion. And we also see when Adam and Eve made their mistake that he came to them with kindness and compassion, not with righteous anger. He would have been perfectly justified, but that's not what he did. And so we see that this life is amazing, that an amazing, glorious, holy God created it, and it is full of wonders and things to enjoy. But then we also see that it's broken. And this week we turned that corner and we started to look at how the world is broken, how it got broken. And what we looked at in the Bible is how Adam and Eve sinned in the garden, and how their sin is passed down to us. And what happens is whenever that sin acts itself out, hurt follows. Not completely, but essentially, at least in the day-to-day aspect of living out our life, sin is essentially pride and selfishness. Adam and Eve were convinced by Satan that they could be God. It wasn't just enough that they had all of the joy and the peace and everything that went along with the perfect pleasures found in God's creation. They wanted to be in charge themselves. They didn't want it God's way. They wanted God's stuff, but they wanted to be in charge. And those are the same sinful, prideful feelings that we fight against and that cause us to act out in ways that cause pain and suffering upon other people. And so what we discussed was how some people intentionally seek out ways to harm others, and other people don't mean to hurt, and even with their best intentions, they still cause pain. And both of those people, what they have in common is a self-centeredness. Whether you're intending to hurt someone out of revenge or jealousy or envy or just spite or hate or some twisted sense that it's fun, or whether you meant to do nice, maybe you didn't consider how they would take those words, maybe you were thoughtless in what you did, maybe you dismissed them or neglected them and you weren't really thinking about it, you didn't intend to hurt them. You were just so focused on yourself, you didn't think about them. And that is where sin came from, because Adam and Eve wanted to be in charge. And we, as their descendants, inherit that same inborn nature that we want to be the captain of our own destiny. We want to control things ourselves. We don't just want God, we want his beauty, but we don't want him. We want the pleasure he created, but we don't want him. No. Don't tell us how to use it. We will use it ourselves. I will decide for myself what I should do, God. Don't try to tell me. And that is where sin comes from. And where sin goes, pain follows. And so we have this brokenness in a world full of sin. And that led us into a discussion of what is classically called the problem of evil. And it goes something like this. God is all loving, but God is all powerful, and evil exists. Therefore, God, who has to be all loving and all powerful, cannot exist, because an all loving and all powerful God would not allow evil. So either he can't stop evil, so he's not all powerful, or he chooses not to stop evil, so he's not all loving. So therefore, God doesn't exist. And that argument really kind of falls apart, because the idea is God is all powerful, but he can only do what is logically capable of being done. For instance, God cannot make a square circle. Okay, that's logically incoherent. Just because the words have some definitions doesn't mean the phrase means anything. You might as well say, can God make a... No, he can't, because it's gibberish. It means nothing. It's like whenever you ask, can God create a rock so big that even he can't lift it? It's a logical impossibility for that thing to exist. It's like saying, can God create a married bachelor? Well, no, if you're a bachelor, you're not married. The two things cannot coexist. It's logically impossible. And so the idea that God could create a world where mankind is free to love or reject him, and simultaneously make a world where evil does not exist, is a logical impossibility. As long as people have the ability to choose against God and focus on themselves, pain will follow. Evil is going to happen. It is a logical impossibility for God to create a free world with no evil. And the idea that just because he's loving means he would never let us suffer is not really logical either. I have a daughter almost 4 years old. I will let her suffer a little bit in order to learn something. There are plenty of things that we go through in life that are not enjoyable, but down the road, we look back and go, oh, well, that's better now. And if I hadn't have gone through that pain, I wouldn't be here where I am. And we, in our limited, finite human understanding, cannot see that scope. We cannot see the beginning from the end. We only know the moment we're in. And so we see that the problem of evil in the world is not a problem for God. Actually, evil being in the world points to the existence of God, because evil is the corruption of, or the refusal of, doing good. And so good, as an objective standard, has to have a standard giver. If there is a law, there has to be a lawgiver, and evil is a violation of God's law. So by acknowledging that there is evil and suffering in the world, which I believe we all would admit the brokenness around us, you therefore admit that God must exist. So, in a nutshell, yes, there is pain. Yes, it is broken, but we broke it. We broke it, but God will provide a way for it to be restored and for it to be fixed. But that's next week. Hope to see you then.